Bonjour, welcome to week 19 of the Out of Towners. Liam and I are joined by Kofi Smiles, the award-winning journalist and BBC Radio Humberside's breakfast presenter.
All right.
Thanks for joining us.
Nah, thanks for having us. We've been sat here chopping it up loads. I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be fun.
So firstly, tell us where you're from, what's your relationship to Hull?
Oh, right. So originally my parents come from Ghana. They came here to study, and my dad came here to study in the late 70s. My mum came to join early 80s. Originally, I think they were in Manchester, then moved to Beverley, and my dad was working for some dentist in between Beverley and Hull, just wherever he could get work, really. And then he had an opportunity to work at a practice in Wivensey, which I think they moved to in 85. And then, they had me a few years later. So I grew up predominantly in Wivensey. And up until I was my family's still in Wivensey, but I grew up there. And then when I was in year 7, I started going to school in Hull. I went to Hull Grammar. But between that time, Hull was always our big city. Do you know what I mean? Hull had the cinema. Hull had the ice arena. Hull had McDonald's, do you know what I mean? Hull had Yankee Land. Is anybody talking about Yankee Land?
Yeah, I know where that is.
With the restaurant which had the car on the roof, it had a big
car
on the roof.
I don't know that. No.
So it was it was Yankee Land, Yankee Burg. It was a place that I think it was on Hessel Road.
I have seen the photos.
It was a big deal, do you know what I mean? It's a 1950s diner, and if we went there, if my dad was going to take us there as a family, we knew we was going to have a great time because the portions were massive, and I loved it because I could just eat loads of burgers and chips. But Hull has always been that big city, which has always had more than Wivensey. Now, I'm not saying that to not Wivensey or to sort of to quantify either place as a place to grow up or a place of enjoyment. Hull was always that place that we went to do extra stuff, because I loved growing up in Wivensey. I had a fantastic time. Me and my mates were always talking about just some of the wild stuff that we used to do. I used to have this high 8 video camera, and I used to go around Wivensey while we're skating, or we're trying to do our own version of Jackass and stuff. Wivensey was mint, but Hull just allowed us to take our interest in things a little bit further.
If you don't mind me asking, I've got 2 offshoots there.
Yeah.
Where's Hull Grammar?
Hull Grammar School. It used to be on Cottingham Road, but now it's moved to... It teamed up with a school called Tranby, and then they became collegiate school, but now they've reverted back to being called Tranby.
Was it in the business school in the university?
What, Hull Grammar School?
Yeah.
No, it was... Hull Grammar School was... Unless the building is being used by the university now. So as you're coming down Cottingham Road, and you can turn off right to go up, up to St Mary's School, it's a building on your left. That's all I know.
All right, okay.
I think it's gone now, but I think it's a letting agency. They've got big chairs outside of them.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. How come you came to Hull for school?
I think my mum and dad wanted me to go to Hull Grammar School because they thought it was a better school than Wivensey High School at the time. I know it's massively improved at the moment, but they wanted us to.
So is it still a thing, Hull Grammar School?
Hull Grammar School is Tranby now. Is
that what you just said? Tranby?
Yeah, it's now Tranby. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So,
was Wivensey a small town mentality? Were you in your own little world there?
Yeah, our whole world was the 01964, and as far as our bikes could take us. So my mates during the summer and on weekends, we get on our bikes, get on our skates, and we'd just go anywhere. Or if it was a good day, we'd be in the sea, we'd be on the beach playing football. And as we slowly got older, when we're on the beach, we're having barbecues, and there's barbecues we tend to beach parties, and people started to learn how to surf and bodyboard and stuff. But Wivensey was cool because everybody knew each other, and and that has its positives, that has its negatives.
Yeah.
But it was we never had any problems, and if we had problems, it was always with ourselves, and we all sorted it out, because we were a weird hybrid of moshers and sports kids and chavs and stuff, who were all united by Jackass and skating and Tony Hawk's and PlayStation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So all these little subcultures, especially when I said mainly. Was it? Yeah, I was gonna say the boys, but with the boys and the girls, we all just hung out and made the most of it, because not everybody had money. We couldn't always come into town and go to cinema and stuff, and we just kept things local. So I think that's one of the things that my mum and dad were always really chuffed about being in Wivensey. They said, we were the only black family there, so my mum and dad look, if you're doing bad stuff, they're gonna know who you are. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I'm pulling moonies at people, like, they're gonna know whose ass that is. So, do you know what I mean? It's like, that's it. So I was like, yeah, okay. But you never really sort of take that in because, you know,
You're
young and, you know, I'm just with my friends, we're messing around, yeah, we're a little bit cheeky
just
and
having
stuff.
fun.
Yeah, we're just having fun. We were always like a bit like mischievous, but we were never like bad or awful or
kids are like
destructive.
that, though.
Yeah. Most kids are generally good.
You
aren't
make
they?
your own fun.
Yeah,
And normally that involves you taking the mick out of someone.
That's it.
okay.
You know, some people are in the crosshairs and some people, and you know, it goes around. It went around a very big group of friends where who was going to be the target for that day. But then it reset at the end of every day, like an episode of The Simpsons. You know, things are back to normal as soon as the clock strikes midnight. You know, it doesn't matter. Let's let's take on this new day and stuff. So yeah, I loved it.
And then did you live in Withensea until you went to university?
So I was in Withensea, yeah. So I was at Hull Grammar, I was at Hymers for a couple of years, and I was at Wilberforce College, where, and I'm going to say this out proudly, if I didn't go to Wilberforce College, I don't think I would have gone to university.
Okay.
Because I just had the greatest support teachers, I had the greatest teachers there. Their ethos is to get kids from the best and the worst schools in Hull to a point where they're taking that next step, whether that's like BTEC, whether that's redoing your A-levels or GCSEs, whether that's getting a job, or whether that's going to university. They were there to analyse each kid, each student as an individual and send you on your way. So I had a wonderful guidance counsellor, John Miller, who knew what I was into, filming, comics, music, storytelling, and sharing that with people. And he was the one that suggested journalism. I never thought about doing journalism. He said English and journalism. And he was like, well, you know, would you stay local? Do you want to go away? And I was like, I'd rather go somewhere because, you know, I was ready for a change. And my sisters were one sister was at Newcastle, another sister was at Northumbria University, and I'd been going to visit them and getting a taste of what uni life was like. So I was like, yeah, you know, I really want to go away because, you know, uni's cool, get to do your drink, girls, music, you know what I mean, all this sort of stuff. Like, there's going to be more comic shops in other cities as well. Like, started looking at cities based on like what comic shops they had available, and then he said a combined course of English literature and journalism, and then I went there in 2007. Yeah, because it was the better option. He said you get to do your books, your reading, but you also get to learn how to analyse and tell stories, and you know, you do radio and things like that if you're interested in it.
What was it like being away from home at that age for you? Did you miss Hull/Withensea, or did you just, you know, spread your wings get stuck into? It's based in Newcastle, isn't it?
Yeah,
Northumbria.
Yeah.
So you had the city life there.
Oh man, because I loved it, but I did miss home. But there was a lot of things that reminded me of home, and I got a lot of gratification from a lot of things in Newcastle. Like, again, my friendship group was absolutely class, and you know, I had that sort of wanderlust of being able to explore and see what a new city has on offer, and I didn't have to travel really, really far and pay for a hotel to go to gigs because so many bands and artists were coming to Newcastle, and because some of my, like, I guess my needs, my wants, and my interests were catered for, I was just like, 01964 who? Do you know what I mean? For a while, and I was finally at that point where I was at university that my sisters had been, and they were in the city at the same time, so it was quite cool. My mum used to come up quite a lot, and you know, there's quite a lot of people from home here, so there was a lot of things for me to sort of be grateful for, and I've never really been someone that's quite homesick. Mm-hmm. So I just sort of cracked on with it, and you know, just threw myself into uni and the uni life and stuff.
And then you did a lot of, you said media, film, radio at uni. Is that how you mainly got into radio? Yeah,
I think because I've always loved radio. So one of the first things I had, like special items that I had. Now I don't know if you guys have got this, because I know that you got siblings. You share a lot. I know I grew up sharing things like Game Boys, PlayStations, Mega Drives, everything that was sort of big and quite techy. Like even the sound system at home, we all had to, you know, share and listen together, which is great. Got some wonderful memories from it. But I remember getting a radio in my bedroom. I shared a bedroom with my brother for a while, but he was at an age where he would always go into my mum and dad's room. But then, so the room kind of felt like mine, and I got this radio with like, it was this metallic blue radio. It had two cassette options holders in the front of it, and it had like a radio, so I could listen to whatever I wanted, not the stuff that my sisters wanted to listen to, and I could, record and make my own mixtapes instead of having to wait for my sisters to leave me a little bit of room on our communal one. And I just fell in love with it because it sort of gave me that first sense of freedom to decide what I want to listen to, decide what I do like, what I don't like, and decide how I want like playlists and stuff to go. And like at the time growing up, I never really seen many like black people on TV. And when I did, there was always like a negative stereotype. But the radio felt different. Radio was like a space where you could be anyone. It didn't matter who you were. You were just that sort of warm, comforting voice. And I sort of formed a relationship with radio then. It must have been about 9, 10, and it's always been something I've stuck with. Like growing up and seeing Zane Lowe on MTV2 doing Gonzo, listening to him religiously on Radio 1, Annie Mac and like Reggie Yates and Dev, when they were on, they were a couple of black kids who were just themselves, but very sharp, very witty and not stereotypical and stuff, and all that sort of stuff stuck with me. And I never really thought I'd be able to get a job in it. I just had that sort of relationship with it. So when it came, when there was a module that turned up as on my course, my degree, I was like, yeah, I want to do that. And the people in my class, we had a great time, came up with our own radio station, marketed it. It was called The Pulse. We went out and did interviews at the O2 with bands and artists that were coming in, getting people to come in. And yeah, it was fantastic. So I was grateful to have that opportunity. And when I did it, I was like, oh man, I want to do this. I've got to do this. This is so much fun. Because I had my own show with the Newcastle student radio at NSR called Get Familiar. And that was all like new music and new things on the internet. So things at the time that were like memes or funny stories, sharing them. Have you seen that? Or we've got some new music from these people, from these guys. And it was at quite a good time where I think the face of popular music and trends was changing. Social media was becoming a little bit bigger, was becoming a little bit more prominent. Phones were getting a little bit fast and sophisticated. So the ability to share was so vital and so interesting, and being able to capitalize on that, like where it's like sharing playlists or these are the best songs I found over this week on SoundCloud and stuff. That became a big part of it. So it was being able to get other people's opinions on something that I'm interested in, that I love, which was something I've always been quite used to when I was younger, just giving like copied videos and DVDs and stuff to people, and sharing games and getting people together to be like, look, right, before we get back into it, let's discuss this thing. So yeah.
What was the next step from student radio?
There was a bit of a gap really, because I did student radio and I got the Presenter of the Year award, and I did a bit of time with Capital, but then it was only work experience and nothing came from that. And I kind of thought, it was like, well, my radio dream is over. I'm doing my master's in creative writing. I had a girlfriend at the time and I was working at Apple, and things were good, but I felt a bit like frustrated in the back of my mind, because I was like, this is good. I'm able to stay here with my girlfriend and my good friends that were there, but I guess that creative itch wasn't like satisfied, and I didn't know where to go from it. I didn't think there was an option, so I kind of put it to bed and just focused on doing YouTube videos with my mates. I did this YouTube video called Kofi's Kitchen, which combined my love of vegan food and pop culture together.
And also, what was it called? CTK?
The CTK Media.
Yeah, we watched the video, and that is really
good.
We
watched this video, right, and I liked it. Well, I'm not just saying that, by the way. No, when you had the wedding suit taken off, yeah.
Oh,
you
yeah.
had to go and find it.
Oh, right, yeah. The thingy weekends, where like the weird weekends, yeah. We tried a few things, and we did a lot of different stuff, like the sketches, and like Callum's really into like political commentary, so he started going into that, and we did like web series and stuff. But we sort of took a break for a while, because we found that it was really weird. Callum was in France, Scott was in Nottingham, Cash was in Leeds, and I was in Hull. No, I was in Newcastle. We found that the further away we were, it was easier for us to get together and make stuff. But as we've all gotten closer and closer and closer, it's become harder. Lives have gotten busier, jobs and stuff. But we've had a good year this year of just like writing stuff and creating stuff to be able to film next year. So you're going to
make the YouTube thing again?
Yeah, we're going to start back up with our YouTube stuff, like with
amazing.
our web series and like shorts and like bits of content and stuff. But yeah, that CTK was a lot of fun. And that just sort of, it was just a bunch of mates talking about weird ideas, filming, creating stuff. That was the intention. And then the Face of Hull opportunity came up in 2016, obviously to represent the City of Hull during its City of Culture year, and my mate sent me the advert, and I was like, oh, I'm probably not going to fit the description. And I was living in Withensea at the time. I was like, they're going to want someone that looks like they're from home and represents Hull. Like, they're not going to want a black guy with piercings and tattoos and dreads. You know what I mean? When you think about someone from Hull, I don't pop up. Do you know what I mean? Someone that looks like me doesn't pop up. But it's like, no, just go for it, because, you know, it was a full-time job for a year. Get to do some radio, online and TV. He said, look, you know, just go for it. And
so what did you do for the Face of Hull? Like, did you have to audition? What was the process?
So they had like an open audition where you had 1 minute to convince a panel of 4 judges why you should be the Face of Hull. So I had this, I remember saying to my sister, I want to be able to talk about my relationship with the city, even though I live in Withensea, we've grown up in Withensea and stuff. And we came up with the idea of doing this spin wheel where I had 6 things on, and I'd have 6 prizes where for every description that I got through on the spin wheel, which is divided into like a pie chart with 6 like things on that that attached me to the city, I would give a prize to the judges. So the whole idea was I got one of the judges up to spin the wheel and to start the timer, so I could be like, right, I had William Wilberforce on there, I had Spiders Nightclub, I had Viking FM, which is probably a bad idea thinking about it right now. I had what else did I have? I had Clive Sullivan, the comic shop. I had my comic shop, and then God, I can't remember the 6th one. So I managed to do that, and I think we got through like 4 or 5 in total, and then I went from that interview stage where they had about 200 people, and then it went from 200 people to like 10 of us having a day's assessment at work. And people have said that this is one of the hardest ways anyone's had to get into the BBC, because we had to do a screen test, we had to do a radio test, and
that's not great.
Yeah,
it's not as loud
as I thought it was going to be. We had to do a screen test, we had to do a radio test, and we had to do like a screen test with Peter Levy as well in the studio. So then they went from 10 people, and they went from then down to 3, and then from 3 to me.
So is that how you actually got into the BBC?
Yeah. So that's how I got in, and I had the year, and they kept me on after that to do BBC No Filter. So Martha and I, my colleague Martha and I used to run that, where it was basically, I described it as that, imagine if BBC 3 and YouTube had a baby but raised that baby in East Yorkshire, Northern Lincolnshire. We'd work with people aged 16 to 35 to tell their stories. And we had a Monday night show, which was like, it sounded very different to anything on like Humberside, non-local radio, where I got all my mates to voice all the idents and stuff like that, and all the music we played was curated by us. It was all new music, and we had an hour of discussions with students from colleges and universities, and basically we tried to find the most marginalised and the most people might feel like a bit of a misfit in the city to come and have a chat and talk about the stuff that's important to them. Like we did talks about like masturbation and porn, so like when did you lose your virginity, and we're all sharing stories about losing our virginity and getting my mates like in to come and chat and stuff. It was just
to make things like that normal. Not that you can't talk about it, just speak freely about it.
Yeah,
that's cool.
It was ace, and like it was just all over the place, because we got to film people, and we'd had like a Facebook page where all the videos of all the people we used to chat with would that's where we would host everything, and we were getting our stuff shared by bigger platforms, like other national platforms and the BBC and stuff. So it was a lot of fun, and I think we really honed in on trying to try and amplify the voices of many people here who are doing stuff that they might think is normal. So we speak with some young carers, and we're like, how are you able to look after your grandma or your little brother and still manage to get like 10 A stars and then drop out of school? What's all that about? Because this is my responsibilities. I didn't think anybody was out there. I didn't know what help and access was out there and stuff. So allowing people to be heard, and then people get in touch with us saying, I can help these people in their situation and stuff. So that was the whole intention of No Filter, and that was fantastic.
Was there a common narrative that emerged, and who did you find were the most marginalised people in Hull?
That's a great question.
Oh, thanks.
Because, it's a really
I don't ask
question.
many of them.
No, you do. That's a fantastic question. I find that people aged like 16 to 25 are the hardest people to get on board with, and to be able to go out and film, or to get them in the studio, because they're like, well, literally most people were like, why do you want to hear from me? this is just my life, you know, I'm not interesting, I'm not doing anything special, but like, well, in your eyes, this is just your day to day, but to other people, they'll be fascinated about the fact that you're able to, you know, hold down this many jobs and go to school, or the fact that, you know, you've been secretly training yourself to do this, or you've achieved it, you know. And I think there's a sort of lack of confidence amongst that age group, and that can be kids that are at school, that can be kids who are living with various disabilities, you know what I mean, and especially, you know, you look at people from ethnic minority groups and the LGBTQIA plus communities, you know, thinking,
Sorry.
It's alright. I don't know what you want to do with it. Yeah, people from those communities who are like living in spaces where people will be saying, "Oh, we've moved on, times have changed, everyone's accepted." But it's like, well, you say that, but like in passing, you'll always have something, you know, negative or derogative to say about someone within that community, and it's like, you know, these groups trying to find and make this place home, but not being truly been able to call it home because of the issues that some people have, or the narratives around their specific groups and stuff. That was quite hard to deal with, because you just want to wrap your arms around people and be like, it's gonna be okay. And it's a shame that you know these are just one of these things. When you are in a marginalised group, you have to have these battles and have these fights and stuff. But it was quite tough across the board, especially when we did a lot of stuff with accessibility. And when you start looking at accessibility and you start noticing how inaccessible this city is, the spaces, we're all going around saying, yeah, I love this place, I can get around, but for a lot of people, you know, being able to just go to the shops is a struggle. That almost has to be planned like 2 or 3 days before. So it was just like, you know, it was such an eye-opener, more of an eye-opener, showing how like there's a lot more struggles out there than we realise, and that the world, you know, truly isn't as fair as we think. So that made me, I don't know, that was quite good. That was gutting, but it was good that we was able to draw the attention to the right people to be able to start making things a little bit better.
Do you think any of those problems that you've mentioned are a symptom of the city? Or is it just, you know, a universal issue across the board? I think
it's a universal issue.
Okay.
That slowly seems to be getting better, but like when you say slowly, it's tiny little increments. More should be done, or more people should have realised certain stuff, but it's all a case of educating, which could be a factor of the city. Yeah. Do the schools have the resources to be able to bring in certain people throughout the year, or to look at racial diversity and inclusion, or to really do a proper deep dive and celebration about pride? You know what I mean? Like, some schools just the teachers don't have the time or the resources, and if they're able to do these things for their kids, the kids are going to grow up with this knowledge about people's, you know, lived experiences and struggles and stuff, which, you know, that is, you know, when you look at the lack of funding and the lack of things on offer to schools in Hull, we're a very poor area, aren't we, in relation to the rest of the country? But yeah. Well,
I think we'll leave the heavy questions to one side. Yeah.
Tell us about how you got your role as the breakfast presenter.
It came up in 2020, so I think. How did it work? I think it was advertised, and I was like, oh, I might go for this. I'll have a crack at it just to see how I do. And so I didn't think I would be able to get the job. And I've never thought about breakfast radio, because I've always thought about specialist stuff, whether it's talk about like movies, comic books, TV shows, music, that sort of thing. I've never thought of breakfast presenting being the place to go. But I remember speaking to some friends, and it was obviously during COVID, and I was like, oh, I might get, you know, like, I'll try it. I managed to get through the rounds, and I was quite surprised. And there was a point where I was like, oh, crap, I have to do this now. Do you know what I mean? I've got to go fairly.
Yeah, got to be in for 6.
I've got to be in early. I was like, oh my days, this is actually happening. But then, because I look back now and I feel like we've done so many different styles of breakfast show, because that took over in 2020, because I was covering for quite a lot from April throughout the summer. Then I probably started in September. The show that I started doing, because it was ruled by COVID, is very different to the one now, and I've done about 3 or 4 different ones in between, because of just how time has changed, and I think how people are listening to the radio has changed, and me finding my voice and feeling a little bit more comfortable, and thinking, look, I don't want to just start bombarding people with the news, because I'm not that sort of presenter. I want to try and make people feel good, and we can hold people account to when necessary. We can hold people accountable when necessary, but I don't really feel like I can bring that to people in the morning. I want to try and like celebrate and stuff.
Yeah, be positive.
Yeah, being
whilst on the way to
positive
work.
and give them just like a different sort of outlook. But still, remember that the world is happening and bad things are happening. We can do that. But now's the time where we need to be that positive force, because that's what I really think resonated when I was doing it during COVID. So,
yeah, well, I think so. Actually, I must be honest. I wasn't listening to the radio then, but the news was so depressing.
Yeah,
you needed a bit of positivity, and I think, well, I thank you for giving it to people.
Oh, thank you.
You definitely
otherwise, flip neck.
You definitely bring a different energy to the show, and I think tell us a bit about the show. So what sort of stuff is on it, and
we had a big meeting about this today. Actually, we look at there's things that will affect people in our area. So we'll tell people about if there's changes coming to certain procedures around schools or your parks or your local areas, or the decisions that our politicians, that local authorities are going to make. We'll analyse what they're saying in relation to the big decisions that are being made down in London. But in doing so, we'll find some positive and inspirational stuff, things to celebrate and get behind and amplify, and just make sure we can get the pride that. Let's say you've got people on an estate in Bransham and they're absolutely buzzing about an event that they've got on the weekend, or there's someone who was from that estate who's gone on to do amazing things. We're going to get behind them. We're going to let people know, just as we'll go and have a look at what's going on in Grimsby and making sure people over here understand that, okay, yeah, you might not have been to Grimsby and you might think there's the river separates us. However, the love people have for where they live is very similar to here. So, people will always have something to relate to. And amongst that, we've got a really good cast of, I don't want to say characters, but people who work on the show, but I try and bring them in the future on the show. So we're always referencing my producers like Andy and Emily and Jamie. I'm always trying to get them involved, and people know who they are, even though they very rarely speak, if at all. Pardon?
Thank God for Andy.
Yeah, producer Andy, who's an absolute saint, I absolutely love the guy. I think we get on with each other because we know each other, we read each other really well, and always not afraid to say, actually, can we try? Not afraid to say no to each other. Yeah. Quite a lot of the time people are and stuff, but we've got that love and respect that's there and stuff. But we've got such a really good cast of people involved in the show. Like Amanda's our roving reporter. Sometimes we bring Nadj in, and it's just we're everywhere. I feel like across East Yorkshire and North Lincolnshire, we're a big patch, and I think we're able to cover a lot. And we give things the time of the day that they deserve, and give things the love they deserve, and we let a lot of the time we let the people speak and tell us their stories. I'm just the guy that's connecting bits together. We're letting I guess we let the people within the patch tell the stories that they want to tell about the things that are important to them. So, and we got some good music sometimes, but for the most part, for the most part, it's just we have a laugh. No, the music's all right. It's hit and miss sometimes for me.
And you've got Star Treks at the moment.
Oh yeah, we got. Oh God, how did I forget about Star Treks? We have this mystery celebrity.
Is that a play on Star Trek?
Pardon?
Is that a play on Star Trek?
No. I thought it was when I saw it.
Star Trek.
Yeah.
So we had a music game. The Daily Dancer, we used to play a set and music between, I think it was from 9 o'clock, and we wanted to do something else with it once the rules changed around what we can do with music. So Andy came up with a game where with the producer think of a mystery celeb, and we listen to musical clues from Monday to Thursday that can sort of signpost us to who it is. We get one or two verbal clues from Andy and Emily. They're like, oh, it's an American woman actor, or it's a British male musician, and the people guess and text in and stuff, and we have to try and figure out who it is. And that's a good laugh because we get a lot of engagement and interaction with that, and I get really frustrated because it could be staring at you in the face, and you've got Emily and you've got Andy it's right there, the answer's there. You're like, oh my God, you know what I mean? When it's just
not wasting someone
like that.
Yeah. And it's like that all the time. But and it's fun because people get involved. I've had people stop me in the street saying, look, I listen just for the Star Treks because I think it's ace, you know what I mean? And I feel like I'm playing a game with other people, and it's something that's inclusive because even though you're doing it on your own when you're texting in, you know that other people are going because we're reading people's results out and stuff, and then people are like, oh, it's so frustrating when you think you've nailed it and then you read out saying, no, is it Michael Bolton? No, is it Tina Turner? No, is it the Queen? No, you're like, oh, I had these people written down, back to the drawing board. So it's just stuff like that allows people to feel a part of the gang. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They become very loyal to it as well because every morning they're like, Star Trek, Kofi's on. Do you know what I mean? And it is a great way to bring people together.
Yeah,
It's
I
cool.
like it. I think we have a lot of fun with it. A lot of fun and frustration, the two Fs. Like, that's what it's like working with me. You're either frustrated or you're having fun. There's no middle ground.
Yeah,
No.
if you don't mind me bringing it back a couple of years.
Yeah.
So you've had this success,
Hmm.
but you said earlier that you thought your radio dream was over
Oh,
when you
right.
started your master's year.
Yeah.
So what would you say to yourself then? And for anyone who's struggling to get into, let's say, the media industry,
Right.
what advice would you give them?
It sounds cliche. I would just tell them not to give up.
Okay.
Well, did I give up? I kind of just stopped. I think I tell myself to sort of look a little bit harder, and like just because you're not doing a show, there are means to do so, like podcasting or what's it called? Tumblr. Do a Tumblr. Because I had a Tumblr before where I was sharing music and sharing links to my podcast stuff. Keep going on with that and not worry about making advancements and getting to that next step and getting to that next step. Just do it for the fun of it. I'm like, there's a Japanese process called Ikigai, which is like one of the secrets to living a perfect and simpler, more wholesome life. And one of the ethos of it looks at the effort in the reward in putting the effort in rather than rewarding the actual sort of like end goal. Like, I want to lose weight, or I want to write the script, I want to climb this mountain. Nah, don't think about being at the top or putting on that final full stop, or hitting this, stepping on the scales and they're at a number that you appreciate. Focus on everything that you're doing in between. That is the reward. And I was like, oh my god, yeah, it is. Everything that I've done up until now, I've absolutely had a great time, but I've learnt so many skills and had so many experiences from it, where I think when I was doing No Filter, I wasn't in that space. I was like focusing on the job, but focusing on like, what can I do in order to get that next step? How do I do the right things that could take me to Radio 1 or could take us to Radio 2 or could take us to Six Music or Apple Music Radio, rather than sitting in and enjoying it. So I would literally just say, just keep doing it. Keep doing what is authentic to you, what you enjoy. Don't think that you have to fit around like a mold or a zeitgeist, because as the internet grows, you will find your audience. Do you know what I mean? You will find your audience, and your audience will find you if you are just telling the truth and doing your own thing. That's it. I think that is, without trying to overload people with loads of stuff, just do your own thing and just keep doing it and find ways to sort of grow and evolve and enjoy the journey. I think because you get so bogged down with like like figures and numbers of how many people are following me, what's my engagement, and just keep steadily building that audience, because it will come if you're consistent, guaranteed. I can guarantee that.
What's the future goal?
Oh God, for me, there's so much stuff I want to do. I'm just like, I want to do this, I want to write this. I think for me, it's just to continue telling stories. Like, I was talking to some, in fact, I had this conversation with a couple of friends a few weeks ago. They were like, what do you plan to do? I said, if everything had to change, if someone could wave a magic wand, what would you do right now? I was like, how many things can I put into this? It's like, well, if you just pick a couple, I'd love to be in the space where me and my friends are writing and filming and creating content for production companies to be filmed and stuff, for whether it's from online or streaming services, just as long as we get to tell stories based on our experiences or work with other people to tell theirs. I think that's like the media, the creative side for things. I think with work, presenting, I want to do a lot more like Comic Cons, like hosting like panels and talks and discussions and debates. And I don't know if I'm young enough to go on Radio 1. I'm 35 now. I'd still love to do something like, one extra talks or a show around like music from film and TV and comic books and stuff. And I'd love to do like an afternoon show on like Radio 2, where you can just come and have fun.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And just have a bit of fun and have a laugh. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like people either driving home and they just think you want to decompress throughout the day. So it's like, right, don't worry, fam, we got you. Do you know what I mean? Forget about that argument you might have had, with your boss, or forget about that joke that didn't land in a group of people. Like, do you know what I mean? We're here to to make fun of ourselves and to like look at these moments and just stuff. So yeah,
I've told so many of them.
You know what I mean? Where you just think people are gonna love this. You go to bed smiling like, oh, I've got an absolute singer, and then when you drop it, people are just like, yeah, I'm gonna call HR. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, so yeah, I think that was it. I think for me, that's where I'd like to be. Be able to sort of pick and choose my jobs, really, and that's the life.
What draws you to telling people stories?
I don't know. I think when I was younger, because I was so interested in other stuff, being able to sort of regurgitate it and tell people why I thought it was cool, but then trying to figure out why they thought it was cool, and then I like that sort of analysis and comparison and the sharing of ideas. I've always been interested in that, even when we was in like year 10 and 11 at school and we had a wet playtime. Me and my mates used to steal the TV, the TV set with the TV and the VCR sort of thing.
Yeah.
I used to we used to get it and we find a spare room and we get loads of kids in. I'm like, right guys, I've got The Breakfast Club, or I've got like this biography of Michael Jackson, or I just have different films, and we'd watch it over a few like lunchtimes, and then we'd all be in there, like 30, 40 kids, 50 kids, just watching this stuff, and teachers would pop their head in and they'd be like, what's going on here? But see that we're all like, we're just watching a film and just leave us to it. Then we discuss it. Do you know what I mean? The same thing when I share music with friends. I just like that whole thing of, well, this is what I got out of it. What did you get out of it? And see if there's anything that I might have missed, or is there a way that I can analyse or watch something a little bit differently through someone else's eyes or through the opinions of someone else. I love that, and I think as I've gotten older and been able to do different stuff with the platform, I guess the pride that comes from some people that might have been shy or might have been a bit scared or worried about, telling their story or being able to connect with other people, providing that space and giving people that confidence. Because I think giving people the confidence to tell their story, or own their story, or, just to have the confidence just to chat with other people about something different is absolutely massive. It can take you very far. And I don't know, I just feel like it's like me giving back, because I know how much I've been given, and to an extent I've been saved by the arts, by music, by books, by films and TV, just being able to help me work things out, or giving me enough time to be distracted from certain stuff so I can have a break from things. I just feel I want to give back to that, because you never know who you're going to connect with through your story, or by telling someone else's story. It might reach someone that can help them and save them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so I just, I need to contribute back in some way, shape or form, because I've taken so much from these, I guess, these various forms of art, I think.
You mentioned your interests, comics, music. I know you're big into festivals and loads of different kind of music and stuff. What's the comic scene like in Hull? Because I'm just like oblivious to this.
It's mad, because I've just done a piece on this actually. It's big, but it's very fractured. I mean, like we've got about 5 shops in Hull that sell comics and manga and all that pop culture stuff. For a city this size, I'm pretty sure Newcastle's bigger. Newcastle's only got 2 or 3, but we've got like 4 major places that are selling stuff, and they're still open. Have been open for a long time. It's weird that it's that big in this type of place, but it just shows you the difference and the diversity in this city, where people might feel like there's a lot of very similar people or ideals here. The fact that comic books as a genre, as a medium, has so many different genres that it could, facilitate for so many different people. But it's a really nice, friendly scene. Everybody I know is just very chatty. Everybody wants to go into comic book shops to talk, because there's nothing better than going into a comic book shop and looking through the rack, thinking what you want to buy, what you're going to get, what you're curious about, and having someone being like, oh, you don't want to get that, or you want to try this out, and speaking to someone who's got a passion or loves a character or anything that's got a passion in anything. It's infectious, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Really, really infectious. But it's really, really good, and that's one thing I really missed about lockdown. Just being in comic shops. Talk to people when parents come in looking really stressed out, like, oh my god, my kid wants to buy my comic. Where do I start? The content, I don't know where to go. But right, how old are they? What they're into? And just be able to just chat to random people. I've seen like kids grow up over the years now. You know what I mean? Just from meeting them in comic shops, and some of these kids are at work, and some of them have got like families now and stuff, which is really, really quite sweet. And they're taking their kids into comic shops and stuff. So yeah, there's a Comic Con on the Cove's got its own Comic Con, which is quite heavily focused on Hull writers, authors, and bringing in people from around the country that are interested in comic books. And you'll be surprised at how much Hull features in comic book work and comic book art and stuff like that, especially from like writers that are from the UK. So it's a nice little.
Are there any? So you talk about Hull features in these comics. What out the window. Yeah. How does it feature? Like, what kind of stuff is written about Hull?
For the ones that I've seen, people just using Hull as a setting, as a backdrop for like, You got men in their 30s that are trying to, figure out life or understand, why can't I date this person? You know what I mean? Just a slice of life stuff. And some people set Hull in, like Scooby-Doo, like horrors and thrillers and mysteries and stuff. And so you've got some really cool backdrops, when you've got people that have done some quite minimalised, like pastel sort of settings of the Humber Bridge and Hethel Falls shore, and you've got a character walking their dog or they're sort of contemplating life, looking up at the moon. We all know that shot. Or the grand houses, the nice houses in like Newland Park, and like seeing the avenues full of life. You're like, is that the avenues, or is that Brixton? Is that Peg? Do you know what I mean? Where if you know it, you know it's Hull. But then some people out there might see it and think it might be a bit more of a cosmopolitan city. But then it gives people that affirmation that actually Hull's got a vibe.
It's
you know
there.
what I mean? It's then there's stuff happening, and it's it's different to what I thought, which is what I always think about Hull. There's always a perception about the city. There's always a perception about the people. But you come here, people stay. So many people I know who become good friends. Like, I came here for uni, didn't think I was going to like it. And that was 20 years ago. but I love it. Do you know what I mean? And it's great. So, and more people are returning as we get older. And so you guys have been here. Do you know what I mean? It traps you. Do you know what I mean?
Why do you think that is?
I think it's probably got something to do with the people. I think and I noticed this about, and you guys can confirm this, because one of my sisters lives on, is it Alexandra Dock in Liverpool? Albert Dock.
Yeah.
She was there for a good
Albert
few years.
Dock.
She was there for a few years. I lived in Newcastle. I lived here. She lived there. We used to go to Liverpool quite a lot, and I love Liverpool. And I used to think there's something very similar about northern, relatively working class port cities. The humour's different. People don't take themselves too seriously. People like a drink. People like to party. People wear the heart on their sleeve. You know what I mean? There's so much honesty. And I find that because they're not the biggest cities, they're not overcrowded, you get to hear that as well. Whereas when you're in bigger places like, and I'll class maybe Leeds, Manchester, most certainly London, all cities which I love, but it can just be a little bit too noisy to be able to find the identity. Whereas like you know a Liverpudlian, you know a Geordie, you know what I mean? You know a Hullense, you know people from East Yorkshire and Lincolnshire. We know what our identities are, even though there's multiple ones. The core one is there, but we're allowed to have that difference. And I think that's quite appealing, where you can be yourself here, but you can't be like, you're not necessarily overshadowed by the weight or the reputation of the place. So plus, it's cheaper to live. It's good to bring up families. Geographically, large body of water. Countryside all over the place. There's just a lot going for it here, I think.
Well, that's the thing, because we always say you've got the city of Hull, which is great, but you've also got the coast. You can drive 10, 15 minutes
That's
out,
and
you've got not many places have that.
It's a given. Then you've got hills on the other side as well. Do you know what I mean? Wherever you go. But maybe I'm being biased. I don't feel there's a lot. I think it's just got. There's a feeling about this place. There's a feeling about this place, and I think it's. I think once you've got it in you, where you feel safe, you feel comfortable, and that you can go out down the avenue, you can go into town, and you'll see people and you can go out on your own, and you can have a laugh because you'll be welcomed and you'll be adopted by a group of people, whether you like it or not. Do you know what I mean? And that
You've got to be spoken to.
Yeah, that will happen, and people are generally curious and want to have a good time. So yeah, I do like it. I begrudge being mad at the place when I was younger, but maybe because I thought that I wanted more and expected more from a city. But you do that when you're a teenager, don't you? You're like, I want to get out of here, I want to do
That's exactly what I did. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But then you're like, actually, our teenage years were mint. Do you know what I mean? We had such a good time. Do you know what I mean? Just messing around and parties at the avenues. When we were too young to sort of go into bars and clubs. When you're like 16, 17, 18, people are piling around the avenue fountains and just getting hammered there at New Year's, and nobody cares because we're all relatively local kids. So yeah, where are you going to find that?
Do you think you'll stay in Hull or around Hull?
I think so. I think if work goes how it goes, and if I'm either get the opportunity to work away, I'd always have a base in Hull. I'd always think that I'd rather just have my sort of my grounding, my station here, and just go and come back. Because it's just like, I don't know, as much as I love London, I could live there for a bit, but being in Hull, like you said, I can get to Willency quick. A lot of my friends and family here, they've all got kids now and involved in their lives and stuff. And, my sisters are in like West Yorkshire and stuff, so I can get to there in an hour. My other sisters and nephews are in Manchester, that's an hour and a half. So Hull's a really good geographical place to be if you've got people around the country.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And like, I don't have any plans to move just yet. I'm moving back into Hull in a couple of months, which I'm looking forward to. So, yeah. 'Cause I miss walking around it, because when I used to live on Pearson Park, walking on down Beverley Road, walking down Springbank and just taking in the sights and the people you bump into. Like, it's where we used to get stories.
Yeah.
People would stop you and, you'd see things, or I didn't know what this is about. And there's murals going up or people working on art projects, or, you just see interesting things, and it'd be good. It's nice to sort of go into work and, take those in and explore them a little bit more. So,
Well, I feel like to finish, we've got 2 questions, haven't we?
We do indeed.
That we ask our guests at the end of the episode. So first question, how would you describe a Hullensian to someone who is an out-of-towner?
Oh, that's a hard question. I bet you've had some mad ones with that. The Hullensians that I know, where am I? Where am I going to place myself? I'm going to place myself on Prinny Avenue. So Hullensian, probably quite trendy, I think. And when I say trendy, in terms of like trendy alternative style, so they've probably got like quite, now it's like quite baggy trousers, isn't it? Like the bootcut sort of thing. Probably Vans on, tattoos, band t-shirts. I'm just describing like emos in their 30s now, aren't they? That are trying to stay relevant. I guess maybe I should like avoid from their physical properties. Let me just go for their attitudes and personalities. I'll say like people are warm, people are generous, and people are willing to have a good time. That's what I would say. Like the average Hullensian, because when I've gone into place, and when I brought friends to Hull and recommended Hull to them, and even the ones that haven't been here, they said they've had a good time. And all throughout 2017, all people were commenting on, one of the main things people were commenting on, which is how well they were treated. Do you know what I mean? And I think we're a little bit cheeky because we will take the mick a bit. We might like push your buttons, push your buttons, and like test your boundaries. But I think it's just a gauge on how far can I have a laugh without offending and upsetting someone. So yeah, I'll go with that. That's a banging question, because there's so many, isn't there? It's like, where do you start?
Yeah.
And I think that's what I think. Okay, and I think you got to look at the diversity and difference, because you can have like some of the hardest and the most experienced seasoned Hazel rollers, and they can be the ones that will shake your foundations and be able to sort of outdrink you and outdo you in an all-nighter. You know what I mean? Regardless of who you are, to people on the complete opposite scale who are quite hipsterish, that have grown up in like who are around there at HU5 and stuff, but both ends of the scale would happily have a drink with each other and have a chat and get along, I think.
Nice.
Yeah.
To finish, what does Hull mean to you?
What does Hull mean to me? I think there's 2 things that I always think about Hull. I always think it's home, and I always get frustrated because I feel like there's so much potential here. There's so many possibilities, but I just feel like our infrastructure for greatness just isn't really there at the moment. People aren't working together enough. You've got so many cool individuals, people doing their own stuff within like film and TV and music and, even event planning. You've got loads of people that want to do different stuff, and little pockets and groups and collectives are forming up, but it's trying to get those collectives to branch out to another collective and branch out to another collective and really work on some big long-term goals like we saw with the City of Culture, but that could be done internally with the people here. So what I think of home and the frustration at its unlimited potential, because there's a lot of minds and willing and wanting and just passion a lot of people have for that place. I just feel it needs to be channeled in the right way, and people need to acknowledge and notice these people that are wanting to do good for the better of their communities. So I get frustrated that those individuals get overlooked. Is that a bit of a cop-out? No. That answer.
There is no wrong answer to those questions.
I was like, have I copped out of that one? Because there's just a lot of it. It's a home, and I feel safe here, and I've got so many memories, and I'm just so grateful. And I shudder to think I could have grown up elsewhere, but I wouldn't be the person I am today. Do you know what I mean? I've had like some of the best moments of my life. I've had some of the worst moments of my life, but that's all shaped my character and able to endure and deal with like good and bad stuff in a way that growing up in this area can only in a way that this area can teach you if you've grown up in this space. So, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Kofi.
No, thank you.
Had a great time.
I hope that was all right.
Oh,
you know
perfect.
what I mean? I could just keep going on and hitting these microphones and banging and stuff. So, yeah.
It's all right. Well, thanks for coming on, Kofi.
No, thank you very much.
And we'll see you all next week.
Yeah, see you next
Ta-da.
week.